How was the drive?
All right.
Rain was pretty much all over with.
Fog. Lots of fog. It's like driving through a cloud half the time. But
welcome folks today to an event that many of us have been looking forward to for a long time, but maybe never really thought was actually going to happen. If you look at pictures of the railroad going back even to the 1940s, this building was already leaning at a precarious angle. It was built in 1904. It's documented in the Historic American Engineering Record. It's a key visual part of the historic landscape here at the East Broad Top, and it was about to fall over. And through a lot of help from a lot of folks, it's now standing up. It's going to be with us for a long time. We've been very fortunate in this project to have the very generous and gracious support of Mr. Joe Kowalczyk, the owner of the East Broad Top Railroad, and I wanted to make sure that he was with us here today for the dedication of the Blacksmith Shop, and I'd like to introduce him to say a few words.
Thank you. Well, I got to tell you, I really kind of enjoyed seeing that thing leaning. It had character. It had a character unique to itself. But it's much better in the condition it is now. And the reason being is, I guess, when you get a dedicated group of men and women with an idea, and energy, and determination, and money, things actually happen. When this got kicked off, I got to tell you that there were a lot of volunteers that gave money all the time of the year. Money given in $50 increments, money to people and others. And when I saw that happen, and I saw that that level of money was here, the level we needed, where were we going to go? And I said, we're going to go to the top. I said, just do it. So when the fellas came over here, I came up, I introduced myself. I said, I want to know how you're going to do this project. I want to know your methods. What's the chance of a failure? And they kind of chuckled at that and said, we're not failures, it'll be all right. And I checked in with them every 4 or 5 days to see how they were going, and they were pretty much right on schedule. So the bottom line is, the reason I'm here today is to thank everybody, not only for this project, but for all the other things that you're doing. You're helping to maintain this very historical, important, and significant property, and not only myself, but my whole family appreciates your efforts. And we pray that they will not go in vain, and that sooner rather than later, something might happen here to recreate more of this wonderful railroad. Now, I have to tell you that the status of the situation is the Preservation Association tells me that they are about to receive some funding, which is going to go into the Mount Union area as phase 1. Then Larry Salone tells me as of yesterday, because I wanted to have a report ready for you today, that phase 2, which would involve taking over Rock Hill, is on its way. But I can't be any more specific. They're searching for philanthropists. They're searching for federal monies. They're searching for state monies. And of course, because of the situation in the United States today, some of those sources are very hard to tap into because they aren't there like they used to do. But we're not giving up searching. And hopefully, the next time I meet with you, I'll be able to give you some news, and let's hope it's some good news. Does anybody have any questions for me?
The obvious. Is it possible to run next year?
Well, That's kind of a very personal thing because of the condition of the equipment and because of the risk versus the reward as a family owner, and because of insurance costs and because of regulations. I don't think it's going to operate under my auspices. I hope it operates, and I hope we can find a way to operate it, but as doing it directly as my family, I'm just too nervous. Knock on wood, we have been very fortunate here. We haven't had any serious mishaps. And that's because our staff over here takes extra precaution to make sure everything is safe. Yes, we've had a couple of derailments. And yes, we've had some locomotive failure. But thank the Lord, we haven't had anything disastrous. Does that answer your question?
Mr. Capaldi, what's the total cost of this project to restore?
Total cost of this project was somewhere around $30,000, right?
$30,000 is the cash cost to be paid for materials and also for the very specialized barn restorers that helped us with it. And then there's an additional significant amount of labor that went into it from the group here.
The association came up with $12,900, I think. I came up with the balance, and then of course you all came up with all the other associated materials and the labor. That's what made it happen. Any other questions?
Joe, do you see in the foreseeable future of any kind of development up in the Barberstow end?
I don't see anything significant where it comes to running a railroad there. Many years and many years and many years as an economist, as a graduate economist, we have studied it forward and backwards, the feasibility of going from here to there, running trains, revenues, seasonal situations, and the return on the investment is not there. Now, other developments perhaps. At one time, the Marriott people were talking about taking the entire 14,000 acres of Broad Top Mountain and making a destination resort. Well, that fell through because the utilities weren't right, the highway system wasn't right. There may be some activity in coal mining. The Marcellus Shale has been pretty much ruled out. We're too far east for that. Had we hit a big Marcellus Shale up there, brought in millions of dollars, we could have funded this thing internally. I don't think that's going to happen. So, other than that, I don't see anything spectacular in the near future. Yes.
Was there any timetable for the phase one starting on Union at all?
The timetable to start phase one has come and gone several times. Now, I knew that question would come up today, so I made a phone call yesterday to find out what is the timetable, and I got the same answer. Hopefully, in the next 2 weeks, somebody in Harrisburg is going to sign a check. So I've heard that May, June, July, August, September. But I'm a believer, and I think something is going to happen because the people in Harrisburg have not told me it's not going to happen. So there's going to be something happen.
Do you think they got a point by you not running this year? Do you think that, I mean, your family has to take all the responsibility for this railroad?
Well, that actually happened 4 years ago when I made the 3-year contract with the Preservation Association. You'll look in the record and you'll see I made the statement. This is the final hurrah for our family. We're going to give this a shot. We're going to give this association 3 years to pull the rabbit out of the hat. And the rabbit's in there, I think, but they just don't have it out yet. That's the answer to that question.
Well, I'd like to, for those of you who've not met him on his many projects here, I'd like to introduce a couple folks that have also been key in this project. I'm going to start with how we got the project started. Dave Richard, who actually found and conceived the idea of using professional barn rights to get the building upright again, and identified the firm that eventually did such an excellent job. And then he was very ably seconded by Jim Bacon, who is the mastermind behind all the work that's been going on here over in the shops for the last 10 years, who helped bring the whole project to fruition. So I'd like to make sure that they're also recognized today as part of this ceremony. I want to suggest we've got the official East Broad Top breakthrough scissors here. Okay. I want to suggest, Dave, if you would assist Mr. Kowalczyk here in cutting the ribbon, and then we're going to walk through a door that nobody has walked through for the last 50 years. Thank you so much to the Kowalczyk family, to all of the donors who participated in the fundraising, to all of the volunteers who helped put the new wall on, so that you can see how far the wall was short once the building was standing upright. We restored all of the doors and other parts of the building. This would not have been possible without the help of all of those folks. So again, give yourselves a round of applause also for doing that. First time in 50 years. Walk through the door.
Cool. Dean has to be the first guy. Such a big deal. This building, this point was at the ground.
Really?
Yes. The whole building.
Camera ain't gonna like this, probably.
We give you all a piece of information. If anybody belongs to a group that may need one of these or two of these, you contact me. These are the nitrogen-powered fire extinguishers, complete with a 50-foot hose and nozzle, that were hanging in the tunnel in the northeast corridor on Amtrak. And I was fortunate enough to know Betty Ann Hastings, and I got about 100 of them. And we have them throughout the property here. If anybody has any facility someplace that needs one of these, let me know and I'll see that you get it. Those sold for about $2,300. And if you're a good product, I'll give it to you for nothing. It's a fire extinguisher in case we get a fire here. Take that off, open this up.
I mean, what other kind of groups can use?
Well, firefighting schools, drill rig. I sold some of them to put on the drill trucks and the drill sites, because it's got a 50-foot hose which can take you all around the perimeter here. Somebody's barn, if they want a meeting house where there's no water. One last thing. You're gonna take a train ride today, and there's absolutely no money involved by law. You are technically my guests, and I'm running a private train for my guests. And yes, I have cleared it with our insurance people, so it's a kosher deal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody here know the history on this baby?
There you go.
Year of birth?
This is as good as mine.
Where's Lee?
I'm hiding over here.
This building was built, you said 1904.
1904 for the building, yeah.
So this was probably put in when the building was built.
Very likely, yeah. And now we need Tom Deal. He's the guy that knows the dates and the speeds of all the machinery. Where's Tom?
No, Tom doesn't know dates very well.
Oh. Okay, well.
This was not one of the ones that was bought during the major renovation in 1906, 1907. That was not in the records. Now, the records Bagel Keller found are basically the only ones I have for reference of when machines were bought. And they were published in the Timber Transfer back in the 90s sometime, I think. But this was not listed in
Now, I have a big hammer in my yard in Indiana that the Smithsonian wanted, but they couldn't get it out of the floor in the Mifflin Steel plant in Johnstown. And it was made in 1883, I think. It's a bigger hammer. I have a Frenchman that works for me for about 50 years. His name is Skip Vermeulen. I said, Skip, I want you to go over to Johnstown and see if you can get that hammer out of the ground and bring it over here. He said, how fast do you want it? I said, within 2 days. Well, the second morning he had it on a trailer that weighed 34, 35 tons. Whoa. And only he knows how he got it out.
we don't want to know.
That's what I was gonna
I assume we're starting the tour here?
Yeah, you guys are taking over on the tour. The first tour of the shop, including some machinery operating, kicks off right from here.
All right. Yeah, I was trying to find Andy to find out if I was supposed to start now or not.
Yes. I think
Oh, I am? Okay. Members of the FEBT restoration crew, and I'll be your tour guide today. This is the first time we're going through the Blacksmith Shop in Lord knows how many years. It was before my time being involved with the East Broadtop. I've never been in here on a formal tour. Now, I did study up on some of the equipment in here. Now, most people, when they hear the term blacksmith shop, the first thing that comes to mind is what you might have seen in the old Western TV shows or movies, the man working in the shop, forming horseshoes to the proper size and getting ready to put on horses, repairing wagons, things like that. While that type of work probably could be done here in the blacksmith shop, on a railroad, that was not the primary function of the shops. There were several things that were done in here that were kind of specialized. Number one, they fabricated and repaired the leaf springs for the locomotives and some of the cars. You can see some laid out behind the gentleman over here, ladies and gentlemen over here, laid out. I did them in batches of 20, according to my interview with Paul McMath, and they were usually kept on hand, ready to go for when they needed to be replaced. One of the other jobs they did was called safe ending the flues of the locomotive boilers. Now, unfortunately, that's not legal anymore, or fortunately, I'm not sure whether that's legal or fortunate or not. But that was also done here in the blacksmith shop. Now, the machinery probably is the easiest to start because it's directly behind us here in this corner. It was done for the safe ending. Now, by safe ending, when a boiler would come in for its 5-year inspection, all the flues would have to be removed from the boiler. The way that was done, they were cut off at the firebox end. The smoke box front, not just the door, but the entire front of the smoke box was removed, and then the flues were pulled out through the opening in the front of the firebox, or in the front of the smoke box. Now, once they were cut off, they had to be cleaned up and inspected. Now, we're not quite sure where this was located, but currently, a machine is located over in the boiler shop, which is used to clean the flues. We'll show you that when we get over there. We're not sure where it was located, but there is no belt connection for it where it's located right now, so we'll have to try and figure out where that was located to figure out where the work was done. The flues were cleaned up. The scale and the carbon any rust was knocked off the outside of the flues. They were inspected for serviceability to see if they were reusable. Now, the problem was, once they were cleaned up and determined to be reusable, they were now too short because they were cut off at the one end. So they had to be repaired. A short extension had to be put onto them. This is what's known as safe ending. Now, this was done with the machinery, a couple of machines right back here in the corner. First thing had to be done was the end of the flue had to be opened up so that they could fit the new piece of pipe inside the other one and weld it together, which was, now I was told this is pronounced swaging. It's not pronounced swagging. I was corrected on that. I've only ever seen it written. I've never heard someone that did the work actually say the word. It's S-W-A-G-I-N-G is how it's spelled. What they did, the first thing they would have to do is heat the end of the tube and bring it in this furnace. It would be heated in the end here and slid over this. This is one of the mandrels, and it would be forced open to where it was a larger diameter once it was hot. Then a short piece of tubing was added to the end. See a large pile of short pieces of tubing. These are the safe ends, or what's left of the safe ends. These were actually made from longer tubes that may have had defects in them, but this was a section that was good. So it would be cut off and kept over here to replace the safe end. Once that was swaged, once it was belled out, this piece was forced inside tight, and again was put into the furnace, and once both of them were sufficiently heated, they would be brought over here, brought into the press, and stamped together. And then welded, the two pieces were actually welded together. So you now had a flue that was the proper length to replace the flue in the locomotive boiler. And there are several pieces laying on the floor. We do have to sort things out. We just got in here recently, so the place is still a bit of a mess. And there are standard forges in here for doing most metal working. And of course, there's two classic anvils in here. You've probably seen these all over the place. There's one over here and one, I believe, over by the other door.
Right by Mac.
Yeah, oh, right by Mac there. There's two of them in here. Now, one of the other things that they did here was work on the springs. Now, the springs in the locomotives, according to my interview with Paul McMath, it was very common to have to replace or repair springs after the spring thaw, when the tracks were very rough, and they would get vibration in there, and of course you'd have metal fatigue, things like that would eventually take them out. The rough track would take a leaf out, and you'd have a cracked leaf. They would be replaced, and as Paul told me in the interview, the springs were usually done in batches of 20. They were kept handy. That's why there are extra spring bundles laying behind us here. The first thing you would need to do is find out how long a piece you would need for the spring bundle to replace the one that was broken. The stock over here on the left side, on my left, is where they came from. They would have the proper thickness and width of metal, but they're about 20-foot length. Now, obviously, no springs are 20 foot long, and there's really not, if you look over here at the mechanical hacksaw back in this corner, you'll notice there's not enough room back there to work a 20-foot piece of material back in there. There's just plain no room. So what they would do, 2 or 3 men would pick up one of the pieces of metal, take it out the door here, and one of the things you'll notice there is a small access door below this window. This door will be open, that slides in. If you notice, it lines up perfectly with the cutting surface of the hacksaw. The long piece would actually stick out into the yard there for the work to be done. the piece will be cut off to the proper length, rolled to the proper curvature, and then tempered. The tempering furnace is, of course, back in the opposite corner. Is back in the opposite corner where this was high carbon steel that they would take there, and by proper heat treating, again, you're getting, metallurgy is a little beyond my expertise here, exactly how this was done, but by proper control of the heat and quenching process, you would actually convert high carbon steel to a spring steel. Now, what exactly that does, again, I'd have to study a little bit of metallurgy or find somebody who is an expert on metallurgy to have this explain what happens in this heating process. But heat process usually, simple tempering is done for to relieve the stress if something is bent to an extreme or anything like that. You have a stress point where the bend is done, and that's to relieve it. But the tempering furnace is that rather large arch roof thing back in the corner there. That was what was done back there with the springs. And then they would be brought over onto one of these work tables. These don't belong here. Brought onto one of these work tables, they would be allowed to cool and nested together with the rest of the spring leaves. Then they would be taken, usually in the leg vise, which is behind the big hammer here. You notice there's a vise that looks like the pivot point is almost on the floor, or it is on, probably is on the floor by now. And that was clamp the pieces together, and then there was a clamp band put around them, welded into place, and that would hold the entire bundle together, which is that band you see wrapped around the center of the spring bundles. And once that was done, they would be ready to replace the springs in the locomotive when one broke. Now, one of the other things, well, you probably, if you've taken the regular machine shop tour with me before, you'll probably remember that most of the tools that were used in the machine shop were tempered steel. This predated even high-speed steel. Of course, high-speed steel costs money, they would have to buy it, but the tempered steel they could make right here. So anything they could make here, of course, was a lot cheaper for them. So they would make the cutting tools they need, they would be tempered here. Again, that's where you would have one of the tempering furnaces, or you could actually use a forge, depending on what type of steel and what level of temper you were looking for. And once the tool was tempered properly, it would be sent over there to be used. And if a tool is worn out or broken or anything, it can be sent back over here to the blacksmith shop, either repaired or replaced, depending on what they would do. Now, the large steam hammer, probably the big impressive piece of equipment here, because it is so big, we're not quite sure what that was used for. Most likely was used to break up castings. When castings were too large to be, were broken or no longer serviceable, they would be broken up into small enough pieces so that they would fit into the iron furnace next door to be remelted and cast into new pieces. Iron can be reused. Any questions so far?
How many times did they do a safe end on it? Till it's wore out? Or?
Well, a safe end, I think, could only be done on one on each end of a flue.
Oh, okay.
I don't think they were allowed to weld the center of a flue.
Okay.
But the process nowadays is illegal totally. So when they take flues out nowadays on a modern boiler or modern boiler servicing, they just cut right down the middle of it because they can't reuse it anyway. So there's no reason to worry about it. They pull it out, yank it out, and just pull the short pieces out the firebox end. I don't know if you've ever been inside the firebox of a locomotive, but there's not a whole lot of clearance in there. You don't have enough room to pull the tube out. That's why they take them out through the smoke box end. And also the superheater bundles would be impossible to pull off without taking the front of the smoke box off, which is on 16, 17, and 18. Those three are superheated.
Wheels. Would they put new tires on the wheels in here?
Normally, I don't think so. We haven't been able to find record of it, but the fire ring for doing that work is, I believe, over in the machine shop, back by the locomotive shop, in that area between the locomotive shop and the car shop. The fire ring is over there. So if they would have done the work here, it would have been most likely for it to have been done here. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of photographs taken in any of the shops, either the blacksmith shop, the foundry, or the machine shop, in the active days. And again, unfortunately, I did have the opportunity to interview a few people that did work in the shops here, but it happened before I became involved with the restoration group here, and at the time I didn't know what I didn't know. So unfortunately, I didn't know to ask the questions. Now that I know the questions, the people are no longer with us, and I can't ask the questions. So unfortunately, we didn't know what we didn't know at the time. We could have found the answer to it.
I wonder if they made the tires here.
Well, the tires, no, the tire has to be either a forged steel or they're usually machined on a large, what they call a vertical mill. And there's several of them out back. They were probably purchased already done. The wheel lathe does have accessories where you can put the tire on there and machine the interior surface to the proper size so that you'll have the proper interference fit when you shrink fit it onto the wheel. And then once the wheel set is assembled, the whole wheel set can be put into the wheel lathe and machined to the proper outside diameter and flange contour or flat wheel for the blind drivers. Now you people should feel privileged. You're my guinea pigs. It's the first time I've done a shop tour in the blacksmith shop.
Very good, great stuff.
Doing all right so far.
That's a small hammer. A lot of time you can do small forging. You know, it can be used for crushing cans, but probably wasn't. You know, I don't know how that got in there. Yeah, obviously that's how they got the aluminum. That's aluminum can. It's a fairly recent can, so that probably was put in. I'm not sure who put that in there or when, and you know, probably even if I did know, I probably shouldn't say. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. This is being used for simple forging. In theory, this is the machine that was used for fabricating the rods that were used with the wheel lathe that are the replacements for the wheel crane, which actually I'll explain that when we get into the wheel lathe. If you've never taken the tour, you'll find out what I'm talking about there. One of the other odd things we noticed about that, even though all the machinery in here is on a concrete foundation, that one hammer is a wood foundation. The grain is running vertically. I don't know how deep those pieces go, but the theory is because of the vibration. The vibrations will be absorbed a little better by the wood, and the wood, of course, will be a lot easier to replace. You know, so it would break up or eventually wear out or rot away, and pieces of wood be removed and replaced with new pieces, and dirt put back in. And you can also see how deep the wall sunk in. If you look along the wall back there, you can see the fresh wood. Well, we didn't cut a whole lot of damaged wood off of there. A lot of that was how far that wall had sunk. In fact, if you remember this doorway, a lot of people questioned why there was a doorway with a lintel only this high off the ground. Well, it wasn't that way when the building was built. That was the answer to it. It's where it is now.
People were smaller back then.
Yeah.
When you raised the building, did you raise it where your belt drives were in line with the machine shop?
No. The alignment of the building was done by the Woodford brothers, the contractor that did the actual straightening up of the building. And we stay away from the word leveling the building because unfortunately leveling usually means flat. We use straightening up the building, you know, when we talk about it.
When were these repairs? Were these older repairs up here in the machine?
A lot of these repairs, if you see the new wood up here, were actually done by the Woodford brothers. A lot of the beam repair was done by the contractor. The new wainscoting and all that stuff was done by the Friends of the East Broad Top volunteer crews. The painting was done. In fact, if you're on the FEBT mailing list, or the EBT mailing list, I should say, I usually post pictures in my Facebook page under the EBT, and I give a link to that. You can lifted up into the right position, and the rotted out roof looks like it's ready to fall down around it. And it's a whole series of pictures. It's well over 100 pictures in there. Shows the whole progression of that roof replacement, all that. And there's a lot of pictures that you'll only see if you were one of the members of the crew and go up on the roof there. Otherwise, that's the only, going to the Facebook page is the only way you'll be able to see them. Because I did get brave and took my camera up there and took some pictures while we were working up there and as we finished different projects.
Do you think the pounding of the hammer contributed to the shifting of the building over time?
Probably not.
You don't think so?
No, we're just on swampy ground here.
Yeah.
This used to be a farm before the East bought this area. And the water table, you don't have to go real deep to get water.
I mean, basically, this was a floodplain
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes.
And also, one of the things we found out while we were getting ready to have the contractor come in here is there's a lot of groundhog holes underneath this. And so you notice a lot, there's some bracing, some diagonal bracing coming down from that, some of those 4x4s, bracing the rack in place to keep from shifting toward us. Well, at the bottom of each one of them, there's usually a stake driven into the ground. There was a couple stakes that we were driving into the ground that we went bang, bang, boom.
Know the feeling.
So that's why there's rather large pieces of metal in there, because we had to actually go to the bottom of whatever that was. We're speculating it's like a groundhog hole or a groundhog tunnel or something like that we hit.
What did they do to stabilize the foundation area here? Or did they just hope for the best?
No, they raised it up. A lot of this is filled in with rock underneath this, and there is heavily pressure-treated lumber, which is, I think, pressure-treated to exclusion or whatever.
Okay, so underneath it, they dug a trench.
Filled with rock and laid in this heavily treated wood, and then put in the new bases of all the posts. You can see all the laminated. It looks like it's made out of 2x lumber to make it the proper width.
This isn't going to happen again. We have to-
Well, I hope not in my lifetime.
Somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
Where's the propulsion for the belt drive?
Okay, the question came up where the propulsion to the belt drive comes up. Now back in the corner here, if you're coming through, you'll notice there's a little tunnel that's covered with metal plates out there. Back here, that culminates into this pit back in the corner. Right here, this goes up to a pulley up in the roof there, which is, of course, driven by that steam engine over in the main shop. So the couple machines that are driven by the overhead belt system back here are driven by that same steam engine. There's a pit back here in the corner. We have cleaned that out. We don't know if it works or not, but we haven't gotten the north shaft aligned yet, so we haven't really worried too much about getting the auxiliary shafts running yet.
Do you have the materials that would take it up to there, or is that going to have to be refabricated?
We'll probably have to fabricate new, because I don't know whatever happened to that belt.
Actually, when we started emptying the equipment out of here to start this work, Chris took that belt down, cataloged it. He started some treatment on the belt, put the markings on the belt where it came from, how it faces, because they were going to be working on that area, and wanted to get that belt out of their way and make sure nothing happened to it.
Was it fabric or leather?
I believe it's leather. And he treated it.
We just hung it up with
Yeah, fabric you really can't treat, leather you can't.
Yeah, I would think back then all those belts would have been leather.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll move on over to the machine shop.
Over there.
lever operated.
Great, Jim. Long way. Now we gotta do it, get the rail running down. That just kills me, the way that valve jumps up and down. If you would have chosen it down. Story's always
hatchet and I turn them around.
Machines running back in this corner, which were originally set up and both run off of single electric motors, which were set up especially for the operation of these machines. The drill press was originally set up several years ago as a demonstration project, simply to prove to management that yes, they knew how to get these things operational with an individual electric motor. Since then, this drill press has been used in several restoration projects, fabricating parts, and of course doing what you do with a drill press. A lot of it, you notice we have new legs on the bottoms of the big steel stacks. Those legs had to be drilled for the bolt holes to go in there. The drilling was done right here on this machine. Once that was proven that we could actually power these up with individual electric motors, the second machine brought online with an electric motor was the wheel lathe. Since that has been changed back over to being driven off the overhead belt system. The third machine brought back into operation in 2010 was the Logan Shipley 22-inch engine lathe. It's right behind me here, and Dave is operating. The main reason this one was chosen to bring back into operation was we needed several parts fabricated before the Combine 14 project, which needed to be made on the lathe. Now, of course, several of the members have lathes at home. We could easily have made these at home on our lathe, but we decided for authenticity and reproduction of parts, we would bring one of the lathes back into operation. This particular lathe was brought new by the railroad in 1906. It's So it was brought back into operation in 2010 when it was 104 years old. It still works. It does everything a lathe is supposed to do. And parts were fabricated on the machine. Right now I believe Dave is working on one of the pins which are used in the suspension. This is one of the worn out pins that he's using for a pattern. Oh, he's making a smaller. Oh, okay, he's making a smaller. Same idea. Okay. Sort of the old joke about how you whittle a squirrel out of a piece of wood. You take a knife and a piece of wood, you cut away all the parts that don't look like a squirrel. You take a lathe and a piece of metal and you cut away all the parts that don't look like the part you want to make.
More money start out with something real big and end up with something small.
You end up with a big pile of chips. Or as the old joke goes, we're running out of metal chips, Dave had to make some more. But this machine, one of the reasons we're most proud of this operation is the fact that we are not just randomly cutting up pieces of metal to demonstrate that the machines work. We are actually cutting up metal to make pieces for one of the restoration projects. Now, if you go over to the paint shop after the tour, the two trucks that are sitting outside, one is nicely painted black and the other one looks like it's ready to fall apart, which is exactly what happened. You got a before and an after truck for the restoration work. There are several parts on that truck that were fabricated right here on this lathe by our machinist Dave Richards. They're made out of raw pieces of metal and made into new pieces for the suspension of the truck. And with any luck, there'll be somebody over there who can actually point out those pieces to you. They're made in the spring system, the suspension system. Now, you've heard me refer to this as an engine lathe. If you're not familiar with the terminology, an engine lathe simply has the capability of driving the carriage on either axis in synchronization with the speed of the faceplate or the chuck of the lathe. This can actually be controlled to the point where you can actually thread a piece of material on either the inside or the outside. There are threading tools. This one can actually be used for inside threading. This is the right point which would actually be used and actually go inside a piece of threading, or you could actually use this as what's known as a boring bar. Once you drill a piece to the larger diameters you have a drill bit for, if you need to go to a larger diameter, we use what's called a boring bar, which would come into the inside and cut this from the inside and enlarge the hole. The pieces Dave's making now are basically going to require external machining. So, and I believe they're solid pieces. There's one hole. You notice Dave's pattern piece has a hole in the end for a cotter pin, or a roll pin, most likely a cotter pin, which will be drilled on the drill press. Now the drill press is a large, heavy-duty machine. This can cut quite a bit of metal in a rather large hole at the same time. The advantage of one of the advantages is it runs very slow, so you can cut heavily, and also it doesn't generate a whole lot of heat. As I said over at the Blacksmith Shop, most of the machine tools used in here are tempered steel, which are a very low quality steel even back in those days. High-speed steel did come on later on after the shop was equipped. But we can't find any record of the railroad ever buying that because that would involve buying them. They would have to buy them tools. There it just broke through. Now, once you're used to working the machine, you can tell by the sound how it operates. That releases the mechanical drive. Again, this machine is driven mechanically. It'll bring this machine, the cutting tool down into the piece. Very slow, very powerful machine. Again, this was bought at the same time when the railroad upgraded the shops in 1906.
Now push down,
Yeah. To drive the machine, you bring this down to where, bring your manual handle down to the point where it touches the machine and engage the drive unit. When it's done, you release it. And simply by being used to the machine, you can tell that it tunes the mechanism, when you're cutting, when it's completed the cut.
just showing that for demonstration.
That one's a demonstration cut, yes. Dave doesn't have any of the pieces ready to drill, for the drill press to actually drill like cotter pin holes and things like that yet. He doesn't have anything machined to that point.